So, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to our second instalment of Q&A with Worcester Warriors. I'm the host for today's Q&A, Nick Baxter, former player, and I am joined by none other than Alan Solomons, who's the director of Rugby, Omar Mouneimne, who's the defence coach, and we've got Mike Hall, the academy coach. As I mentioned before, it's the second instalment in a number of Q&As by the club. We're really keen to keep in contact with supporters, really keen to keep in contact with our local community, and we know we're in challenging times at the moment where we're unable to play, but that doesn't stop us from being in contact with everybody. Last week we had a really insightful Q&A with the owners of the club, Colin and Jason, and today, as I said before, we're followed and joined by a whole host of coaches to talk us through and answer a number of questions from our supporters. So without further ado, I'd like to say a big thank you to all the supporters that fielded and posted questions. They include Greg Fowler, A.G. Bailey, Christopher Gadd, Benedict Grab, Melvin Owen, Reece Smith, Andrew Morris, Sixways Gold and Blue, the favourite Sixway Gold and Blue, James Wheeler, Simon Davis, Richard Beddoes, E.J. Hadley, and George Ward. So, without further ado, guys, I've got a question. The first question revolves around recruitment and the development of players. So, I'm going to give this one to Solly and Mike, if I could, please. First question is, we talk about building the club through its academy. What are we doing to further strengthen the number and hopefully quality of young players coming through in our catchment area?
I think there's probably a three-pronged attack on what we're trying to do. I think that we're obviously part of the vision is to make the club sustainable through a productive academy and developing our own players. So I think the three-pronged attack really looks at how we develop the players through our own programmes. So we've got the developing player programme, which runs from under 13 to under 16. And then we've got the player development groups, which run at under 16 and under 18. And we've engaged with over 750 players this year in those programs. So we're trying to keep the net as wide as possible for as long as possible. You know, it's a good talent development principle that, you know, the longer you get to work with players, the more players you see, the more good players you will get coming through. So we're trying to do that. And, you know, we're within resource restrictions that we have with regards to people and coaches and staff and facilities. So that's one of the ways we're doing it. We run club festivals. We've had 60 teams, local teams from our catchment area, age under 13 and under 14 to 10 festivals this year, where there's academy coaches and staff watching, discussing players with coaches and looking to bring those players into our program. So, you know, we've got a big net of players there that we're trying to work with and develop. While at the same time trying to work with the schools and the clubs in the area to make sure we're not missing any players and making sure that we identify the talent that's there. It is a challenge, Bacco, as you know. It's not an exact science, talent identification and development. We're trying to follow the best principles through our strategy that we've got across the area. We've got a big geographic area. You know, we go from Hereford down in the south right up to the top of Shropshire. So it's geographically quite a challenging area for us. But, you know, we're lucky in that respect that we've got a big area and we've got a lot of good clubs and schools. And I think probably the other way that we're trying to make sure that we're getting that number and quality of players through is through the quality of coaching. So just making sure that our coaches who are working with the players are developing players that are players that have got the attributes that can cope at Premiership level. And, you know, that will come through alignment to Solly, Omar, to the coaches around what is required to play at Premiership level. And players like Noah Hewood, who came through last year from the under-18s, is a good example of that. You know, he's somebody that's got the attributes required, and it'll be up to Solly and Omar and the team now just to polish him and make sure that he gets those opportunities and that he can flourish within the first team.
Excellent. And that's a really good point. I know Noah's a real shining light in terms of potential player. You mentioned 750 kind of players that you kind of engage with. How do you get from that 750 down to someone like Ted Hill or down to someone like Noah? What's that process? As you say, not really a science.
It's not a science. There's a lot of luck involved and a lot of, serendipity there. But I think the most important thing is the talent development principle of it's a late specialisation sport, rugby. Physicality plays a huge part in the game. You know, Omar will know more about that than me, but it is a physical game. And until those players go through maturation and develop physically, it is very difficult to tell which players are going to be the ones that can cope at Premiership level or thrive at Premiership level. So trying to keep as many players involved as we can for as long as we can, and also not making sure that we are, looking beyond the here and now and trying to project to the future. So the game will be different in 5 years. So our under-14s at the moment, when they're 19, the game's going to be very different, and we're trying to work out what is the game going to look like in 5 years' time, and how do we best prepare those players for that game of the future.
So there's a question here saying, are we going to recruit mainly English qualified players, or are we still in the market for overseas players?
I think what you've got to understand is our vision is to grow the club, as we said, through our academy, and particularly our homegrown players. I think that's very, very important. We've brought back Graham Kitchener and now Matt Kvesic. We have 15 homegrown players in next year's squad, which I think is fantastic. We've retained all our youngsters. Now, that doesn't mean you're not going to go for some quality foreigners, some foreign players. The bulk of your squad will be English qualified. I think next season, we're close to the 80% mark of English qualified players, and that's how it should be. I think when you look at the foreign players, they have to be of sufficient quality to be in the starting 15. And probably you're looking at a maximum there of about 8 of them.
Excellent. And 80% qualified players, where does that put us against other clubs, Solly, in terms of that target?
I think it's pretty powerful. Last season, we were at 68%, which caused us some headaches in order to qualify for the EQP payment. But we fixed that up. And a lot of that has to do with developing the club through our homegrown talent. And that immediately gives us a strong Worcester identity when boys like Ted, Ollie Lawrence, Andrew Kitchener, I mean, Kai Owen, there's so many of them that we've got. We've really got almost a starting 15 of a very talented under-23 side that are all homegrown.
The next question is, do we scout in less obvious markets for rough diamonds who may provide more value for money, e.g. Rugby League, Sevens, less developed countries, e.g. Africa, Eastern Europe, etc.? Who wants to answer that one?
Can I just step in there? Because I think I've just said to you, our policy is homegrown players. But obviously we work together. I mean, the academy, Hawley does a fantastic job, as do all the others in the academy. We've had terrific players coming through. And Hawley and I have sat down, and we'll sit down with the coaches when we return. We've got depth charts, so we look at each position. Now, it may be in a particular position that we don't have a player, and then we'll start looking outside for that player.
What are your thoughts on the crop of youngsters coming through? And I know we answered it a little bit before. What are your thoughts on the crops of youngsters coming through, and who's likely to be the next Ollie Lawrence and Ted Hill? I suppose the great thing is creating those two players, but then obviously, like everything in rugby, you have the expectation of where what next one's coming from. So without crystal balling it too much, have you got any ideas on who's going to be the next couple of players to kind of come through?
I think we have actually. Hawley and them have done a great job. There's a young fly-half called Finn Smith who's absolutely outstanding. I was privileged to watch him play just before we closed things down. He's a 10. There's Seb Atkinson as a 12, also another very talented young player. Jack Forsyth as an open side flank. And then we've mentioned Noah. I think Noah is a terrific talent. So I really think it's fantastic to just see this production line just keep coming through. So well done to Hawley and his men. They're doing a great job.
The next question I've got is around coaching. So we're all aware of the difference that Omar's made for our defensive side since he's arrived at Sixways. Are you concerned that we seem to have found it difficult to score tries at the other end?
Yeah, I think first of all, we provide always equal time for attack and defence because invariably you spend 50% of the time attacking and 50% of the time defending. And it's true that our attack hasn't been up to the mark, and that's evidenced by the lack of tries and the lack of try bonus points that have occurred during what has taken place so far in the season. However, I do believe that we'll be able to rectify that. And I do think that it's important that the attack and defence work together, and maybe Ohms can just step in here and just go through that a wee bit.
Yeah, so I mean, just to address the lack of tries, at the end of the day, as a defense coach, all I can try and do is support the attack coach as much as I can in his sessions, provide, stern opposition, and vice versa. On my defensive day, when we replicate, for example, if you playing Leicester, I obviously get the default shape, default strike moves, default maps that they play, and I get the attack coach to assist me. We work together to try and bring that realistic sort of game speed and obviously realistic opposition sort of plays. I feel the boys have stepped up to the mark, and there's a lot more we can still improve on in defense. The thing is, for the last few years, and Solly sometimes thinks that me saying stats is us trying to overpraise the guys, but the guys have forced a lot of turnovers. The last 2 years, we've been top three, and if not number one last year for the whole year, barring 2 rounds. Wow. And you've got to convert those. You've got to score tries. And so what's happened this year is we're third for turnovers forced. But you see how many opportunities, just that last pass, one-on-one, Shilcock to a Ted against Pears, we win the game. Beef right through, ball ripped out of his hand illegally or slapped illegally against Northampton. We win Northampton. So it's unfortunate, but we haven't taken as many chances as we maybe should, forcing those amount of turnovers. We've made the most tackles in the Prem the last 3 years. And at the end of the day, you need to score tries for that, because the juice in the defense actually comes from scoring tries. So as much as people think that I don't like people scoring tries, man, listen, we're scoring 4 tries a game. I'm chilling like a villain. Making 250 tackles a game, and it's defense. Oh, missed opportunity. The opposition have hope, and they stay in that window where, anything can happen. Whereas when you score, you're energized to go, look, I don't mind making 200 tackles. We just scored 4 tries. So it's a tough one. It is tough when we don't score. People think I don't mind, it's because as long as we only conceded 1 try. No, I want us to win, and it's the team has to win. Everyone has to win.
It says here we also seem to kick the ball away more than the opposition. Is that something you're concerned about?
Mate, okay, so
if I can just, before I put Ohms onto it, let me say to you that in any game, it is vital to have an effective kicking game. I think that is absolutely key, that you've got an effective kicking game. All teams that win, whether internationally, domestic competitions or cross-border, you'll find invariably the winners of the tournament kick the most. So I think just that we need to understand that at the outset, and then maybe Ohms can just take it further, because he's very much part of the kicking game strategy.
Thanks, Ollie.
Obviously, I understand the fans' frustration with kicking in general all over the world, right? It's like going to a boxing match and your favorite boxer sets up with a jab, gets his rhythm in round 1 and round 2. Of course, you want to see haymakers from the start, mate. You've got to measure your opponent. And I'll tell you something interesting. This year, we've kicked 1,200 meters less than most teams. We are 9th for kicking meters at 8,000 kicking meters. Let me tell you that. Bristol Bears have kicked 9,200 meters, the most. Okay, Exeter have kicked 9,100 meters. We kicked the least. We've kicked the 8th least than anybody else. And volume of kicks, we've kicked the 2nd least, physically kicked the 2nd least. So that's all in their minds. For territory, we are joint 6th best territory team in the tournament, even with those stats. Now, I'll tell you something interesting from last year. Last year, we were the joint highest kicking meters. And guess what happened last year? We had the best season in the history of the club, barring I don't know when. Okay, and we hovered 6th and 7th the entire period. Now, I did a study this whole year before the World Cup on all the World Cup games, the whole Six Nations, the whole Super Rugby. And for the last 10 years, I've been doing kicking game out of my skin. The same thing exists, like Solly said. Kicking game gives you 4 things that fans can never understand, unfortunately, and I'm going to try and make it clear. First of all, how do you force try-scoring opportunities? Do you know the answer? How do you get try-scoring opportunities? How do you get try-scoring opportunities? You think they just open up? You get try-scoring opportunities from kicking game, because if I kick to contest and you knock it on in your half, I get a scrum. If I drag you to touch, I get a line out. If I catch on the fly, win behind you. If you catch it and I tackle you, I can counter-up, get a penalty for holding on, and get field position. There are so many outcomes from kicking game, it's scary. Now, sometimes we kick downtown because we don't want to give a line out. Sometimes we don't kick contestable because our scrum maybe is giving away a lot of penalties. We don't want knock-ons in our half. Trust me, there's not a stone we haven't unturned. But South Africa and England, the biggest turnaround stories in world rugby in the last 2 years. England exited out of their own World Cup 2015. Eddie Jones only changes the same 2 things. Allen changes in every team. Michael Checker changes in every team. Eddie Jones changes in every team. Physicality and conditioning together, and kicking game. South Africa and England have got the scariest kicking game in world rugby. Those stats continue for every major team. So England, 61% average territory in the World Cup. South Africa, 59, both finalists. And that list goes on for every tournament in the world. So we don't kick away the ball the most. What happens is because we're not getting the reward from the kicking game. You see how many times we kick downtown, we race, they run back, we get a turnover behind their 10, turn it, 2-pass, knock on. We score those tries and we're sitting fourth. You will not be speaking to me about this. South Africa scored 18 tries in this World Cup, more than anyone. South Africa, boring South Africa, 39 tries, boring South Africa. Even though you know they're going to box kick, you go, oh, they're going to box kick here. Oh, England going to box kick here. Mate, you can't stop that box kick because the race chase, the aerial skills, the first up pressure on the tackle is so heavy. They will force a scrum, a line-out, or something in your half. Now, when they get in your half with that penalty opportunity or that line-out opportunity, the difference is they maul 20 meters from your line. They'll maul you 20 meters and score. When they get a scrum there, they're going to blitz you and then bulldoze you in that scrum. They're going to get another penalty and get closer to your line. And then they score. Do you understand what I'm trying to say? So exactly what you're saying. 3, 2, 1. So first error you make, give the penalty. They get in your half. Second error, they climb on top of you. Now you can't cope. The bridge is about to break. Third error, they score.
Score, yeah.
39 tries, South Africa. Boring old South Africa. 18 more tries than anyone in the World Cup. Mate, would you ever have said that?
No, not. And you talk about the third negative is a score. The first one's a kick. The thing that someone would say, "What are you doing?" That's the first thing in the chain of events. I love it. The last question I've got on the coaching is, there was a couple of questions, but you've pretty much answered that before, Solly, in your statement before. With the influx of the new promising coaches, how will the future be planned for the long term, and what is the 5-year plan?
Yeah, I think what's fantastic now is we've got in a really good group of coaches. Our coaching team for the coming season, obviously the completion of the 1920 competition first, but then the 2021 competition is fantastic. Not only do we have, are they superb technically, they're fantastic blokes. And the other thing is, obviously, we've been in communication with one another. There is clear alignment between all of us, which is vital. And I believe there'll be strong synergy between us. And I think that's going to make a huge difference. The coaching staff are in here for the long haul. So when you talk about a 5-year strategy, they are all a part of that. So I do think we talk about stability looking ahead. I think with the staff we've got in at the moment, and Hawley has just come in as well, doing a terrific job with the academy, I think that augurs well for the future. And the lads that have come in, and I include Hawley in this, have got a very, very strong Worcester connection. Particularly, you look at a guy like JT Captain Worcester, Jockey was in the Worcester Academy, he's part of it. Hawley has been very much part and parcel, lives in Worcester. So again, that links back into our identity, that strong Worcester identity. So long term, with the quality of staff that we've got in at the moment, that we've just got in now, I think it augurs really well for the future of the club.
Okay, can I just come in there as well, Bacco?
Definitely.
When I started at the end of September, one of the first conversations I had with Colin and Jason, the owners, was around, I've been involved with the club. Well, I was originally involved with the club from 2006, so 14 years connection to the club and living in the city, and still had a lot of connections even when I wasn't working for the club in the period where I was at Bristol. But one of the first conversations I had with Jason and Colin was around what had gone on over the last 15 years. And we really dissected and looked at maybe why the club hadn't moved forward as much as they'd hoped to. And I know, obviously, within the question here, the supporter saying a long-time supporter of the Warriors. And, having lived here for 15 years and being involved with the club initially and now coming back, there's certainly a lot more synergy between the ownership and through Solly, through the director of rugby, through the academy. And, we're constantly in communication about how we can build the club for the medium to long term. Now, obviously, Omar and the guys are always thinking about Saturday, but Solly's job and my job is to think about what does the next 3, 5, 10 years look like. And Jason and Colin are very keen to make sure that is part of our thinking. And you can become very focused on the next game as a club. But, part of the strategic role for Solly as the director of rugby and for me as the academy manager is to work with Jason and Colin on building that long-term plan. And I think for the first time, certainly since I've been involved since 2006, I think we're getting there and we are making progress in that area.
This is a good one because it's around the Cavaliers. It says, is the way the Cavaliers played in the Premiership Rugby Shield a blueprint for the first team too? Because we did see some really exciting stuff coming through the youngsters in the Cavaliers last year. Who wants to answer that?
I'm going to answer that.
Okay.
There are a number of things. People need to understand that the competition that the Cavaliers play in, which is a development competition,
Mm-hmm.
bears no resemblance whatsoever to the Premiership. And the other point that I want to make is that, and I think the Cavaliers have done exceptionally well, and the lads that have worked with them have done well. But the truth is that we've got an extremely powerful, we've got tremendous strength in depth and a very powerful Cavaliers side. I think the key for me is to get alignment. I don't think that's the blueprint for us, because it's played in a different way. But we need to get strong alignment between the Cavaliers and between the Premiership teams. The Cavaliers need to be aligned with the Premiership team. That is something that has been completely missing in my time to date. And that is something that is going to be addressed immediately, that the new staff come in, and there will be a complete alignment between the two. And that's taking nothing away from the Cavaliers. I think they've played terrific rugby. They've done really, really well. But we've got a very powerful Cavaliers side because we've got tremendous strength in depth because of the homegrown players. But we need to prepare them in a way that they're ready for the Premiership. And the competition in which they play, the development competition in which they play, is not the same as the Premiership. And one needs to take note of that. We need them playing in the same way as we play. The overall game strategy, the decision-making, is critical that the two are completely aligned. I think that's absolutely vital, so that when a player steps up from the Cavaliers into the first team, it's absolutely seamless. There's a particular strategic approach which we have to the game, and I think that has got to be mirrored by the Cavaliers. You've got to compare apples with apples. They're two completely different competitions, but the alignment is critical, and I've put everything in place. As soon as we return, that alignment, people will be explained how that alignment will work.
Beautiful. Which will make a nice, easy transition for the players that are moving through. Okay, excellent. You might have, this one is a kind of a mix-up of one of the questions before. We've retained the majority of the first team squad, which you have done really successfully there. Solid, awesome work. Do you think the squad next season is capable of finishing above mid-table?
I think the squad next season, you've got to bear in mind that you've got fundamentally a new coaching staff coming in. So you've got to take that into account. But they certainly do have the ability to finish in the top 6. The one thing that people lose sight of is that the young players are developing. Now, during this season that has been played to date, we have given our young players a lot of opportunities. Guys like Kai Owen, Nick David, they've all had opportunities to play. So was Ollie Lawrence the player he is now last season? No, I don't think he was. No, he wasn't. The same applies to Ted Hill. So we're going to get rapid growth of these young players is going to come through, particularly with the outstanding coaching that they're going to receive. And I think that it does take a while, but I think we're going to see that improvement coming through, which is going to make a huge difference when you've got 13 guys that are coming, that are in the squad. I mean, that's a whack of the squad that are those young players. So they are certainly going to be improving. The next thing that I'd say to you is Milani Nanai is one of our X-Factor players. Outstanding in the Super Rugby competition. He was injured 8 games in, and he was still finding his feet coming off the back of a Super Rugby competition. We've now yet to have an op on his shoulder. It's fixed up. He's rehabbing well. So there's an X-Factor player who's back. Ollie, there's no doubt, is an X-Factor player, and he's now gaining in confidence. And Francois Hougaard at the back end there started playing really well. He's another X-Factor player. So there are some X-Factor players there. We've got good strength in depth. We've got some good players in the squad. And I think we've added the guys that have come in. I mean, Matt Kavesic has played for England. He's a pretty decent player, besides for the fact that he's homegrown. Billy Searle I know Billy, I worked with him a little bit at Bristol. He's played outstandingly in the game against us for Wasps. I thought he was outstanding. So he has an outstanding prospect. And young Joe Batley, who's coming in, is like an Andrew Kitchener and a Scotty and Cleggy. He's exactly the same as those guys. Young guy, played for England under 20, massive kid, talented rugby player. So, I think we're in pretty good shape.
Are you going to be mid-table? Solid.
I think we can do it. Listen, this is no easy competition. If you look at this season, we've lost 4 games that we should have won. We have ourselves to blame. But there are 4 games that we've lost that we should have won. So if you look at it, Bath, They're all home games. Wasps, Northampton, Holmes touched on it, and Exeter. We should have beaten Exeter.
I know.
We win those 4 games, and suddenly there you've got 12 more points going on. Suddenly we, at 34 points, we 5th in the table. Now, last season, you look at it, and that's better than last season, where we did well last season, and I agree with Holmes. But you look at it, we narrowly beat in the last minutes Leicester away and at home, Bath and Saracens right at the death, both Bath and Saracens. So the margins at this level are massively fine. They're massively fine. And one's got to understand there's very little difference between the teams. And it's making sure that you fall on the right side of the margin. And I do believe with the people coming in, we talk about our attack, which is critical. I agree with Holmes. We've got to finish off those opportunities. But having spoken to Jockey, who's coming in, Matt Sherritt, and running our attack, what I like about him is he's going to bring simplicity and clarity, which I think are critical. And obviously, Holmes is 100% right. We created opportunities. We didn't finish them off. We need to do that. But I think you've got to see the whole thing in context, and you've got to get perspective on it.
Thanks for answering that so honestly and so passionately. I'm going to close off now. And again, not a crystal ball moment. You've mentioned before that you've stated that the policy of events or matches being cancelled and playing behind closed doors. You're not a politician and you're not in charge of these decisions. But when do you reckon we'll be back on the paddock, Solly, in your opinion?
It's so difficult to say because it's a very grey area, but there is an appetite from everybody to get back on. And I'm pretty optimistic that it will be sooner rather than later. But it's very difficult to say at this point.
With that, I'm going to close off the Q&A. The sooner we can get back on the paddock, the sooner we can start seeing Worcester Warriors and seeing that potential come to life. So thank you for your time today, guys.